with the new Tron movie coming out, of course, I have to talk about all the Tron movies. And yeah, so we're going to start with the first one, and then we'll talk about the sequel in a different video next week. And I also will be talking about Tron Uprising the show. I also reviewed the Tron Uprising the game, and I'm going to do a video on Tron comic as well. So stay tuned if you love Tron. I've already done some videos on Tron, like I said, or reviewed the new game. Tron is a really interesting movie. Basically, if you don't understand what Tron was in the 80s, Tron was Disney's response to Star Wars. One of many, actually. One of the first responses to this. In fact, I think I might do a video on this just because of how it relates to Tron. And I think it'd be interesting to do a video on it. Black hole. This was another one of Disney's responses. So basically what happened is 1975, Jaws came out. And Jaws, it was 75. Jaws came out. And Jaws was a big deal, one of the first big blockbusters ever to exist. It was the first movie, and a lot of people don't know this, to be simultaneously released everywhere in the States. What used to happen is movies would go on like a tour where it would be released in the major cities first, and the smaller ones, and it'd keep going around the country, and that's how it'd make its money. Well, Jaws was the first time the entire country was watching the same movie at the same time. It was a huge hit. It was the first summer blockbuster. George Lucas made Star Wars in 1977, and that was really the first blockbuster because Jaws was just a really great movie, and the first Star Wars was significantly like sillier and goofier and kind of more what audiences would want out of their blockbusters, just more dumb fun kind of fantasy stuff. It was a huge hit. We all know it's Star Wars, right? But Disney and other studios kept kind of trying to look for movies like they could make to be Star Wars. And all of them were failures. So you had stuff like Kroll. You had Flash Gordon was being revived in the 80s, which is kind of funny because George Lucas loved Flash Gordon and paid homage to that in Star Wars, right? But Disney had their own attempts with that, and that was with Black Hole, which we'll do in a different video, I guess. Save that for a different video. But, one of the more successful attempts, and I say successful, but keep in mind this movie was a failure when it came out, was Tron. I say successful just because, first of all, we have a trilogy now with the new one coming out. There's an animated show. There's theme park rides. There's comic books. There's video games, right? Merch. So clearly, while Tron is kind of a failed franchise in a lot of ways, it's always, the show lasted one season. This movie failed at the box office. The sequel made money, but failed to make as much money as they wanted. And so, it's kind of this interesting franchise where they keep making more, but it's never really worked out. So I kind of say all that to say, like, this is a really important movie to film history with its kind of place of showing, like, how these studios tried to be like Star Wars. Disney's attempt here was very different, though, where, like, their idea was, let me revolutionize special effects. And it really did. And honestly, even though the effects are not anything like you would want to watch in a movie nowadays, like if this came out today, it would definitely be criticized for its bad effects. But because this movie has such a unique style to it, the effects still hold up in kind of their own unique, charming way. You definitely have to have like a feel for those sort of things. But if you don't really have that feel for those sort of things, I don't know how much enjoyment you'll get out of it. But this is kind of the problem with this movie, though, is it was a great visual effects movie that kind of moved us forward, and having CGI in movies and things like that. And you see a lot of that stuff here. But Disney and a lot of these studios kind of just thought that Star Wars was popular because of its effects and not because it gave us like a likable character, simple storytelling. A lot of these movies had kind of over convoluted storytelling and like weird things about them, and this movie definitely has some of that. You know, this movie is very metaphorical. I mean, there's clearly some allegories going on with religion when they're talking about the users that created them in this kind of game world and stuff, and that's clearly an allegory for religion. But it, and I think that's an interesting idea, and I always love that aspect of this movie. Kind of gives it a different feel, but it's still like, oh, yeah, this movie's not great rewatching it because it's such a product of its time that I love Tron. I love so much about this movie and kind of its place in film history. But I also have to sit and acknowledge this movie is just very, very flawed. Thinking about this movie and its place and everything. Still a movie that I like to watch every so often. So, very interesting movie with its own time and place in history. You know, Tron Legacy, I think, is a movie from memory that does hold up quite a bit better, but we will talk about that when we get to that review coming soon. Let me know your thoughts, like, share, and subscribe.